The PlayStation 5 Pro may have just handed Xbox a big win. We knew it was coming. The PlayStation 5 Pro has been rumored, leaked, and sort of, tossed out into the universe as a thing that would be available this holiday shopping season, and it has finally arrived. Now, on the heels, or I should say leading up to that, Xbox didn't want to be left out of the conversation. While the Xbox Series X Pro has never materialized, Xbox did announce some hardware refreshes of their own that went over like a wet noodle. If you remember, they announced the Xbox Series X with a 2 terabyte storage drive and a disk drive for $599. Now it's a lot of money for a console that is now, we're like 3-4 years into this generation or something like that. And it just felt like a miss at the end of the day because, hey, the PlayStation 5 Pro is coming and everything is going to be bad for Xbox. However, let's dive into the details here because the PS5 Pro was announced today and it's a good console. I'm not going to discount that. So according to PlayStation, the new PS5 Pro has a 67% more compute units on its GPU. Now this sort of boils down to about 45% faster rendering. There's also going to be advanced ray tracing because you're not getting that normal ray tracing. You are getting advanced ray tracing for the PS5 Pro. There's also some AI-driven upscaling that they are calling PlayStation Spectral Super Resolution. Almost screwed that up there. Will also be natively built into the console as well. Think of this as like DLSS or FSR, I think is over what it's called over on the NVIDIA side. There's also Wi-Fi 7 connectivity, 8K resolution support for limited number of titles. I think Gran Turismo might be one of the few for the 3 people who have an 8K resolution TV. You'll be able to do that. And this thing is coming by November 7th. It will also, by the way, feature 2 terabytes of storage. And so that is the PS5 Pro. Play has no limits according to PlayStation because this is their top dog. This is the new, I believe, by far, the most powerful console you can buy today. And it is available for pre-order here starting in a couple weeks. But the basic idea behind this console at a nutshell is that, look, on current gen consoles, you have to choose between fidelity mode or performance mode, which is really boiling down to, do you want better graphics or do you want more frames per second? And the goal with the PS5 Pro is you no longer have to choose. It's just they're basically the same level of performance, but you're getting better graphics. And that was sort of always the dream initially when both the Series X and PlayStation 5 released, right? We should be able to get 4K 60 frames per second. That was the benchmark. And the reality is that both consoles kind of missed, right? Some games can do these things, but not everything, and it's usually like a trade-off somewhere along the way, and the PS5 Pro is trying to bridge that gap. They are going to bridge that gap. However, to have the privilege of doing that, you are going to be paying $699 US dues. Now that, friends, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money for a console which has traditionally been pitched as a device that is budget friendly, may not always be the right term, but a value package deal of a device that sits under the TV and it's just easy to get into the games you play. So at $699, Sony is really trying to target that premium market, the people who on the Xbox side might be buying an Elite Series 2 controller. They're buying the high-end headsets. They might be in the market for something like an NVIDIA 4080 or 4070, something like that. And all they want to do is just play high-resolution games. And this is where they landed with the price point, which is rough because if Xbox got slaughtered for doing $599 with a disk drive, by the way, I should point that out, that at $699, you do not get a disk drive. And also, hilariously, you don't get the vertical stand. They felt the need to price that in separately as well. So if you combine everything that you would potentially want, a disk drive and a stand, you're like $700 into this thing. Or $700, that would be good. You're $800 into this if I could do basic math at the end of the day to get a disk drive and get everything else. Now, not everybody needs a disk drive, and I get why they separated them out, but it's just like $700 for a console. And maybe I'm just showing my age, but like that's realistically, if you don't own a PlayStation, like if you've never had a PlayStation and you're looking to enter the market, maybe the PS5 would be the place to start. But like, if you could spend $1,000, just go buy a gaming PC, and I genuinely need that. $700, someone's going to say, well, you cannot match the performance for the PlayStation 5 for $700. You could probably get decently close, but yeah, let's just assume that you got to spend $1,000. If you spend $1,000 building a gaming PC, you can definitely get relatively close. And here's the kicker, guys. You can play the top tier games from Xbox and PlayStation on the PC these days. Yeah, you can't play everything. You're not going to get Astrobot. You're not going to get every single title, but you're going to get the vast majority of which we already know most people play. Warzone or Call of Duty. You got Fortnite. You got Minecraft. You got Roblox. Like the big branded titles are on PC. And so like whatever PlayStation, it's just, $700 is a lot of money for a console these days. And here's some things to keep in mind as we start to go through this cycle. I do believe these things will sell. Like they're not going to sell at the same volume as the PS5. They're very clearly targeting a specific demographic. It's also worth pointing out that as the quarters go by, PlayStation's gaming revenue is going to go up, right? If you sell a $700 console, you don't have to sell too many of them to really show growth in your hardware revenue, whereas Xbox is not. Right? That is something that's you're going to have to be comparing here in the near future. The thing to keep in mind, though, is that I'm still firmly in the camp that most people who are going to buy a PS5 Pro are probably people who already have a PlayStation 5. Maybe it's going to get the I struggle to say it's going to get the PlayStation 4 gamers over. It might sell somebody who's running a PS4 go to PS5 Pro. That is, you can't rule that out. But I can continue to think that it's going to be mostly people upgrading potentially who already have a PlayStation 5 and are just looking for the next greatest thing. And that is fine. I don't knock on those people at all. People buy iPhones every year and those are more money. And so maybe that's where Sony's coming from. But the problem is that the console and games have this stigma of a price cap limitation on like what is acceptable in a console space. And so Sony is very much trying it. The PlayStation 3 was really high priced, and I think Sony felt some pain from that. However, it's many years later, and maybe they can get away with it now. But we will find out. But it's going to be worth pointing out, and I'll have to say this every quarter because somebody's going to write in, well, PlayStation has so much more hardware revenue than Xbox. Yeah, it's because they launched a console for $700 that is, it is more performant, but it is $700. It doesn't mean their net profit is higher, right? Margins, we don't know what the margin is on this console. I'm assuming that Sony is absolutely making some money on this console, and they're not doing this as a loss leader because that could potentially be very tragic for Sony at the end of the day if they can't even make money on at $700 for a console. But it really, like, we are within like spitting distance of just PC pricing. And so, yeah, we'll see. I'm curious if how much this is going to bleed in over to the next generation consoles, right? We're still pretty far away from like a PlayStation 6, probably 2 to 3 years, maybe 4, somewhere around there. But if Sony's trying to test the waters at $800, $700 to $800, like maybe that's what we should be expecting for the next gen consoles at that point. And I don't know. So yeah, keep all that in mind. Now, the one thing that I think Xbox should seriously consider doing, and I don't know if they would do this, like if they were gonna, like slash some pricing on consoles to like really get people moving, now's the time to do it. Take $50. If Microsoft has a couple $1 million stashed away from marketing this, just like use that money as discounts on the Xbox, and I think that's what they should do. I know it's easy to say that from this side because I don't know what their actual cost is to produce these consoles right now. If they're making money, if they are, I would assume that by this price point or this time they are, but things Phil Spencer said multiple times, typically when we see discounts, like those aren't materializing in the console space. So Xbox knocking like $50 off all of their consoles right now would be a serious maneuver for them to try to win over some, at least some good, some good marketing wins at the end of the day, because it's very clear that Sony thinks gamers are going to pay $700 for a top tier console. And that's just it. That is just it. And if you're abroad, it's probably slightly more outside the United States here when you factor in currency conversion and everything else. But yeah, the PlayStation 5 Pro, it looks a lot like it, but it's got like 3 stripes instead of 1. And I don't mean to like knock PlayStation. I hope that they do well. The best thing that can happen for Xbox is PlayStation is continue to duke it out, and then the gamers win at the end of the day. And so that is where the PS5 Pro comes from. is them trying to one-up Xbox again, because Xbox no longer, in my opinion, I think it's more definitive now, has the most powerful console on the market. However, it's also less. It's also $100 less. So we're going to find out real quick here what the buying power and economic unit pricing does for consoles like this. And so, we'll see. So as always, my friends, make sure to stick around because the only BS on this channel is me.